I did not know that all those years ago, that we have a sick system. It's not to make people well. It's to keep them sick and keep them perpetually dependent and codependent on a system that doesn't heal them. Men have been conditioned in our society. They don't realize it, a lot of people, until they go through really deep healing, but they're projecting what they really think of themselves. There are 20 ways of oneness. If you yourself become each and every one of those ways, it's not even possible to attract somebody who can't treat you in those same ways.
Greetings all. Welcome back to Living Once Twice, the place where we rewrite narratives, reinvent ourselves, and reimagine our lives. Before we dive into today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also the YouTube channel. And also be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Living Once Twice, where you can view more great content, including information on all of our amazing guests, including the guest that I'm going to bring on today, which is the one and only Rachel Fiori. Rachel is a spiritual leader, teacher, coach, and author of international bestseller, Mason's Way, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, which we're definitely going to be talking about. Rachel is also founder and CEO of Masters of Self University. You can listen to Rachel's Masters of Self University podcast, where Rachel and her team of MSU mystical life coaches share wisdom and powerful testimonies on transformational healing and growth through the universal ways of oneness and so much more. Rachel, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am fabulous, and I'm very excited to be here with you. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive in.
Rachel, as you know, before we hit record, I was just trying to figure out ways to capture my gratitude to you. And there's nothing more that I can say besides just thank you, because your book, your teachings have been kind of the how-to manual that I've been searching for in my own healing journey. I know I've shared with you and your other mystical life coaches like Ellie, who's been on for episode 55, and Danny, who was on for episode 66. Your book came at a time where I was looking to figure out through my own self-sabotaging behaviors how to heal and how to proceed forward. And again, as we'll talk about, you really give some information and North Stars of what people who are looking to heal themselves need to do. And it's what they need to do, and hearing it with honest feedback and intention that is going to pierce your heart and soul. And so I hope people are just strapped in for this episode, because again, what you have to offer, I mean, I think it's going to just elevate the world around us. And I hope, and I know that our conversation to do is going to do such.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. So I'm excited to dive in. These teachings and the teachings of oneness consciousness are meant to do just that. Give us the roadmap to create and shift into the new earth. That's what it's here for. So my soul lights up when we talk about it. So I'm excited to dive in.
And there's a lot that I want to dive into. I want to talk about the ways of oneness. I want to talk about, start like personal accountability. But where I want to start is just for folks who are not familiar, Rachel, with your background. Could you just share more about your journey? And also, how did your road of becoming an occupational therapist influence your path to becoming a spiritual leader and teacher?
Yeah, good question. Do we have like 5 hours, or do we only have like 45 minutes? So I'll simplify it as much as possible and try not to make it too boring. But I'll tell you that, when I got my master's in occupational therapy and became an occupational therapist, I went on to specialize in 2 different fields. But one of those pathways that I specialized in was mental, emotional, behavioral health. And I learned that our system working behind the scenes in westernized healthcare, we have a sick system, and that it is set up that way. And that was devastating for me to find that out firsthand. I did not know that all those years ago, that we have a sick system. It's not to make people well. It's to keep them sick and keep them perpetually dependent and codependent on a system that doesn't heal them. And so whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, and especially spiritually, we don't have that system. I know people listening to this now, most people or many people really have come to that realization at this point. But that was devastating to me, because that's not how I function. And so with all of my, education and training and experience and, my spirituality, my own spiritual journey, all of that combined, I realized why I was really there was to see what not to do and to learn more deeply about our wounds, our programs, how it creates illness, separation consciousness, and how to actually get out of that old system, that matrix, and heal for real, not just temporary nonsense, coping mechanisms. So I got to see all that nonsense firsthand, stuff that doesn't actually heal. And then I realized, oh, I'm actually here to completely create a new way. And I just said, okay, that's what I'm here to do. So I better get going. We only live so long in one lifetime. So I just started to create a new way. Fast forward, I have my corporation and I certify coaches in the kind of work that I do. And this is what led me to what I do today.
I appreciate that you provide that context. And I think for so many people, it's eye-opening / maybe a truth some of us, to your point, are starting to kind of waken up to, of some of these systems that we've got in place are not set up to help us to heal. And that is, it's really vital for us to know, because you offer something in where, oh, we could be empowered for our own healing. And I think that's kind of a huge turning point, because so many of us will go to our healthcare system, or we kind of have become conditioned in many of these ways. And it does lead to something we'll talk about a little bit later, a victim consciousness type of a culture and mindset in society.
And powerlessness. And powerlessness. I literally was told, sick people make us money, Rachel. Stop healing people. Sick people make us money. I'll never forget the first time that was said to me, and it was not the last time. It devastated me in that moment. And I don't mean that to be like melodramatic. I mean, I'm here to help heal people and help people. I was like, well, I don't even understand. That was an epiphany of what the system really is and how we're trapped in that matrix. When that was stated to me, I was like, oh no, I'm not here for that. I do not consent to all of this. That's when I knew, okay, I'm here to create a different way. Guide me, lead me, divine team. What do I need to do? What do I need to learn? Who do I need to become so that I can create something different? I realize why I'm here. It's to learn the truth about this, and then to create something that is more elevated and in oneness, not in this separation, keep people sick kind of garbage.
Rachel, I want to ask you something kind of deeper about that, because you said when you found out that, wait, this system is set up to keep people sick, and how devastating it was. Because some people could be like, okay, I'm just a part of the system. Little me can't change this, can't fix this. But how did you cultivate the fire, the desire in yourself to be like, no, there has to be another way, and I'm going to create it? Because you easily could have just signed up and just said, this is just the way things are going to be. Like, did that desire in you, did that go back to an earlier age? Is that just kind of how you've always been? I'm just curious about that.
It's how I've always been. And it was also the choice of, this isn't good enough. It's unacceptable. I don't participate in anything. This is never in a superior way, but I don't function that way because that lacks divinity. And so our system shouldn't lack divinity. Our system should be here to empower people and to help people, not pretend like we are, or temporarily mask things in order for them to stay trapped in the system, right? So I've always been that way, but that's just how my soul works. And it's like, oh no, that's unacceptable. And if that's unacceptable and you're not going to do anything about it, I'm going to do something about it. It's just that simple. If I don't, who's gonna? I don't wait for other people to make the change. Be the change. So step up and be the change.
And that is where it kind of takes us to the book that you've created, because you created a system for us. And as I shared, for people who are trying to elevate their consciousness and who are trying to heal themselves, you offer really a gold map and forget a blueprint, a gold print to doing that. And I was just hoping that first and foremost, when they hear this title, Mason's Way, they're probably going to be like, well, curious to learn more about who Mason is. And so I was wondering, could you speak more about Mason and his special role in your life, and also how his role in your life led to the creation of this book?
Sure. So Mason was my soul companion dog. And with what my soul is here to do, I have some of my soul contracts are for a being in the form of a canine to come in and always partner with me and be with me in love and light and on a soul mission. And Mason was here to reflect back to me the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, which is what the book, which is what I teach and I write about. He reflected them back to me. And the day that it was the morning after he died, I got myself out of bed. I'm in grief. I've been hysterically crying. I got a couple hours of sleep. I made my way to the couch to cry some more. And my swollen, puffy eyes, I looked like I was on drugs. And as I was sitting on the couch, my divine team, I heard, "Get your laptop." And with the energy that came through, I know what that means when that energy comes through. Something wants to be channeled into written form. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like right now? I'm just in grief. I need to nurture and take care of myself. And get your laptop a second time. So the way of trust is one of the ways of oneness. And I do have trust in my divine team. So I just took a deep breath. I was pissed off at my divine team and my higher soul, but I trust them. So I got my laptop and I sat on the couch. And in one flash, I got, "Do you now see what his life really was?" And in a flash, I saw his entire life, my entire life, both our lives together, every way of oneness, and how he demonstrated every way, how I was living in ways without realizing I was living in the ways. It was shown to me in a split second. And then I immediately started to channel the book. And there it came, one universal way of oneness at a time, one right after the other. And I just cried and I wrote and I cried and I wrote, and rinse and repeat until the book was fully written.
Wow. Wow. And hearing you just talk about the journey that you went on and how he was teaching you, he was your teacher and showing you these ways of oneness. And now, you kind of get to offer that to us all. One of the first parts of expansion that your book had on me is that I didn't grow up with a dog. I never grew up with a cat. I've never looked at animals as being spiritual teachers. And because of your book, and people will discover this as they read, nature has a lot to offer us. And so I guess, what would you offer to someone who's never looked at animals or nature as spiritual beings, spiritual teachers who are also here to support us along our journeys?
Yeah, beautiful question. I would say the way of equality. The way of equality is the 9th out of 20 ways of oneness. When I say the word equality or inequality, what immediately pops into people's minds right away is race, color of skin, humans only, right? So when you talk about equality, we are so limited in our separation consciousness. We view it for the most part as meaning one thing. That should let you know how vibrationally the level of inequality we actually create on this planet, that we don't even consider other beings when we talk about equality. We consider race, and then maybe some will consider gender, racism, sexism, misogyny. And then some more people will consider, oh, but what about, homosexuality and gay and lesbian, but transgender, etc. That's how we start. Some people will start to pop in what goes in their mind when you say the word equality or inequality, right? And yet, for the most part, that's where it stops. We don't think animals, we don't think nature, they're equal to us. Just because they're different species, for example, doesn't mean their lives are less meaningful or should be valued in a different way than what ours are. I can tell you that I saw a clip just a couple days ago on social media where someone was holding their phone filming this, and there was a blazing, horrific, terrible fire, firemen everywhere. And you saw this man in t-shirt, jeans, whatever, getting ready to jump in and try to break down the fence. It was a tall wooden fence. Everything was ablaze. And I knew immediately when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I knew what he was doing. And I was like, well, I have to watch the end now. Please have a happy ending. Please have a happy ending. And I'm watching this. None of the firefighters are going in. That man went in, risked his life. Out comes a pit bull running, just soared out. So he rescued his dog. What broke my heart, first you're like, oh, thank God, happy ending. Okay, for that dog and for that man, yes. Except the people whose job it is, who are protected, who have the gear on, who know the safest way to go save that dog. Why weren't they bothering? Why did they stand around? Because all the humans were out. They don't value a dog's life or an animal's life on the same level that they value a human. And then guess what? Think about this. in with racism, with sexism. A lot of men don't value a woman's life. They think they're superior. White people who are very racist don't value a black person's life in the same way. This is all examples of inequality, but we don't realize the extremes that we go when it comes to inequality, because we love to think that just because maybe we're not racist, for example, or maybe I'm not sexist, for example, that means I'm a person who generates equality on this planet. And yet, would you go into a blazing fire to save a dog or an animal or a guinea pig? And if a lot of people say, well, no, right there's why we have inequality on this planet. When you're unaware of it and it's in your blind spot, it's going to manifest in ways that are more blatantly obvious, like racism or sexism. Until we heal it on all levels and become the way of equality, we will still experience it in whatever form it's going to show itself.
Mm. And this is what's really powerful about the book, Rachel, is you force us to start grappling with some of these questions, these kind of imbalances that we have and how we've been continually operating, and then operating for generations and passing along. And I know when it comes down to like starting with the ways, we start with the way of responsibility. And at first it's like, okay, the way that we have been living isn't in harmony. It isn't just. We got to pick a new path. But I guess I'm curious of your take on this, because I find that many of us, we know that question. We know things are off, whether it's because of our relationships not working out, how we're showing up at work, how our finances are, our health. We know what we need to do in terms of taking ownership of our life, but something is preventing us from taking that step, making that leap. So I'm just curious to learn about what internal or external like roadblocks do you see that are preventing us from kind of like, I guess, leveling ourselves up when we kind of already know what we need to do or the change that we need to make in our life?
Yeah. So let's use a simple example. If somebody's cheating on their spouse, just stop cheating. Doesn't it seem so obvious, right? Just stop it. If somebody's morbidly obese and their health is really failing and they're having a lot of conditions because of it, well, just stop eating. Eat the healthy food you need to eat, right? Isn't it simple? Because we've come from separation consciousness for so many thousands of years, we don't come from oneness consciousness. We look at things outside of ourselves. We have not been taught to work on the energetic level. Now, some people will hear that and say, oh, well, I work with energy. I do this modality. I'm a Reiki master. I can do quantum, I'm certified in this and that. And that's not what I'm talking about. And that's part of the problem. So there is a program running that guides you to show up in a certain way. And that's an energetic program. We are nothing but energy. So we have to be willing to learn something brand new. And it's not like energy's new for a lot of people, but again, in the form of modalities and healing stuff, that's not what I'm talking about. We have to understand that we function as energy. And once an energy in the form of a program, self-sabotage program, for example, when that gets created, if the core of that program is not energetically changed, that is always your program until the day you die. That's why people think it's so hard to change, because we keep changing at the behavioral level, or we use coping mechanisms, or we try to get a schedule down, or we try to, we're trying to create solutions that don't change the energy of the program. So that energy never dies. It's always going to be there. Change the energy. Everything connected to that energy has to change. That means your thoughts, your emotions, your behavioral patterns, all will change with a domino effect when you learn how to go in and work on an energetic level with your mental programs, emotional programs, behavioral programs, your inner child wounds that are unhealed. That's what we teach, at Masters of Self University, step by step. So to true transformation, permanent healing, you have to work on an energetic level. And if you're blindly working on an energetic level, just get some energy healing. It's never going to work. That will never transform what you personally have going on inside of you at an energetic level.
I want to stay here for a second, Rachel, because there's a couple things that I want to unpack. First is like, okay, I can hear some people saying about energy or healing that, well, I'm going to therapy, I'm doing the journaling, I'm taking the cold showers. Like, is that surface level? Is that helping us get at the root? Or you're saying that no, there's a whole nother level that we need to in order to get to our inner child and our emotional wounds, and the kind of the surface level stuff that's going on isn't
Yeah.
even helping us really break the ice.
No, and it's almost never permanent. You have to keep that up for a very long, for forever, right? So if you use breath work, if you use cold plunge, you have to do that forever. That doesn't permanently heal anything. It doesn't transform energy. It temporarily moves energy. And this is where I see people try so hard to do so many healthy, beautiful, wonderful things for themselves. And yet, if you stopped doing those things, what would happen? You'd go back to the way that you were for the most part. And the only time you wouldn't is, again, if I had 5 hours, I would explain it and break it down. The way that energy works, surface level, superficial programs can be changed by those means. That's why some people, but meditation really helped me. But yeah, I know it does. A little, it doesn't transform the core wound. It's impossible to transform the core wound by doing breath work, for example, by doing a cold plunge, by having a routine, by doing yoga. That's not how energy works. So when we understand that a little bit, we can understand that we have to stop living in the old world, the upside down world, where everything is outside of ourselves. Everything is a method and a technique. No, think about this. I'm going to invite everybody listening, take a deep breath. This is going to be a punch in the gut for some people. The creator of life is woman, is feminine energy. Okay? What's missing from these scenarios is feminine energy. The only thing that heals and transforms literally is feminine energy. Masculine energy doesn't transform. So I'm going to take this a little step further. Woman, simply by being woman, she innately, by being a woman, just by being alive and breathing, has the ability to take energy, a divine spark, a soul, invite that inside of her own body, and take matter, physical matter, a sperm, her own egg inside of her body, combine those together and miraculously create and nurture and grow life and then give birth to new life. She is the master of transformation. All of our techniques and modalities almost completely exclude feminine energy, and it's outside of us. How does she transform and create the miracle of life? Inside of her, in oneness. That is oneness in with her own body until it slowly becomes two, and then there's the birthing process, and now we have two humans, right? In our transformational healing journey, we don't function in oneness. With all these modalities, we don't function in the feminine energy that is the only energy that transforms. So if we want to heal this planet, we want to heal ourselves individually. We want to heal our relationships. We want to heal our scarcity. We go energetically inside in oneness. We transform it from inside of ourselves. There's your miracle. Once that baby is born, it never goes back in, right? They go on to live their life. There's a separate life. There's your journey. Have a beautiful life, baby, okay? Our energetic programs, once they are transformed from within fully, that's permanent healing. They never go back. That baby, that human doesn't go back to being a fetus. That is the miracle of what feminine energy is here to offer and bring. And so we have to wake up and start expanding and elevating to a place where every individual learns what that means and connects to that divine energy that they are. Because as you know, and most people listening to this know, whether you're a man or woman, it doesn't matter your gender. You still have feminine energy as a part of you. We have to. That's how we function in wholeness. But most people, it's suppressed, it's ignored, it's ripped out of us. We function mostly in masculine. You're never going to heal if you function in those masculine energies, which are represented by things outside of us versus going inside and doing the inner work.
I want to talk about that aspect though, Rachel, because to your point, many people are blocking or suppressing themselves from tapping into their feminine energy to heal, because I hear you use this word like wounds. And when I think of wounds, I think of pain. And Who
Yeah.
wants to feel, who wants to experience pain? And I've heard this quote from you because it feels like that's our route to transformation, is using the feminine energy to heal the wounds. But
Yes.
when it comes to pain, I've heard you say one of the secrets to why people are stuck and struggling are hidden in their core of their pain that they refuse to feel. So stop, listen, and learn what it means to love your pain so you can better understand why it's there and to finally heal it, excuse me. And so I guess I'm wondering from you of like, how do we then reframe going into the painful experiences, things that we've suppressed,
Yeah.
things that we've blocked out, and being able to use the feminine energy to kind of tap in to heal that? Because
Yeah.
again, who wants to go back to what happened to them when they were 13, when they were 7?
Right. So you're so beautiful. I love this, and I so appreciate you asking this. So a powerless person who doesn't know how to heal themselves would never want to go back and do that. You see it? When we don't know and we haven't had this education and we haven't gone through these processes to learn what we can become and what we truly are inside, of course we don't want to go. And I don't recommend people do, to be honest, unless you have the guidance and how to learn how to become this. So our coaching programs, all of our coaching programs at Masters of Self University, they're step by step by step, bite-sized pieces of how you do this. It's not about just going into your pain, right? Because what's that going to do? Other than a whole lot of nothing, you're going to feel a lot of pain. It's going to be very uncomfortable. And that's scary. And who would want to do that? But the key is learning first. And in our coaching programs, you learn it simultaneously. But I'm going to put it this way because it's easier to understand. First, you learn how to connect to your energetic divine power. That is an energetic process to literally connect to your divinity. That's not a mental concept. It isn't a thought, oh, I'm divine. I don't care what your mind thinks about yourself. It's probably wrong because it's probably running a program, right? So we learn step by step, how do I connect to the energy that is literally the energy that is my divinity, that connects to my soul, my higher self. That is an energetic process to do that. When you learn how to do that through the way of connection, one of the ways of oneness, by the way, you learn how to do that on an energetic level, and then you just feel. You learn to be a feeling being, which is, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like to be connected to my divinity. And you will grow that power, expand that ability over time. When you grow that power and expand that energetic ability, that divine, healing, loving, nurturing spaciousness that is the truth of what you are, what every person is, you learn how to activate that energy and become more powerful in it. That energy itself, you then learn, okay, step by step, let's go into my pain. Let's go into my unhealed traumas. And your traumas are loved. They're nurtured. They're nourished with divinity, which was lacking when you had that experience to begin with, which is why you have those programs and those traumas to begin with. We bring divinity energetically to your pain, to your wounds, and that is your divinity. That is the power that you have, that everyone has inside of themselves. You learn to work with that power. You realize what you really are, which is a miracle, a powerful, divine, beautiful expression of divinity itself, because you are divinity itself. And that comes online more and more. The more powerful you are, the more powerfully, the more capable you are of healing more of your wounds and your pain, whatever that means for any individual.
There is a lightness that hearing you talk about this process, that there's guides that could support someone in going into their pain
Yeah.
and deriving a sense of empoweredness about their past, about wounds and the situations that they've gone through. And I guess I want to talk about some of these examples of empowerment, because I've heard you talk about your own past and your relationship with your stepfather, how like you appreciate that relationship. And you could kind of correct me on that, but I found it so powerful because with you sharing kind of how you were treated and kind of the impacts that had on you. And so I guess if you don't mind just sharing for folks so they can kind of understand the sense of empowerment that you could gain by going through this transformational process, where it's like, oh, you can reclaim past experiences that maybe made you feel powerless
Yes.
and be empowered by them. Because I know we live in a world where so many people are walking around. The term I've always kind of gone to is like on broken ankles that haven't healed. But you
Yeah.
can really reclaim that power, re-break the ankle, go into that pain, and heal yourself and come back stronger than ever.
100%. And that, again, it's a process of elevation, a process of an energetic process of elevating our level of consciousness. People still think raising our level of consciousness just means like it's happening in the mind. I'm just awake more. I just see more truth in the world. That's not awakening. That's not raising your level of consciousness. So, growing up with very abusive stepdad, he was terrible. It was horrific. I lived in fear always. The level of abuse on so many levels was there. And, the work that I teach and my certified mystical life coaches teach, I want to mention this because a lot of people get trapped in inner child wound healing, because a lot of people do that out in the world, but they stay stuck in their inner child. They never actually heal the inner child because they see where the child is wounded. They see the powerlessness that's, of course, created. You have an abusive adult man and a young child, of course you're powerless. You can't control that adult. So powerlessness gets created energetically, and then you run powerlessness programs as you grow older, especially in your romantic relationships. So going back and doing this work energetically is to connect to that inner child in the moment of powerlessness, in the moment of fear, of fight, flight, or freeze, whatever the trauma is, whatever the reaction is, and to energetically guide them to a place where they alchemize the pain in real time and realize, I can't control him, but what I can do is become the way of truth. I can see with divine sight, open my third eye, I can see the truth in this. This has nothing to do with me. His abuse, his screaming at me, his mental, physical, whatever it was, had nothing to do with me. That was his brokenness. So how do I then not allow that to traumatize me or make me weak and small and pathetic and powerless the rest of my life, or victim consciousness? I can see that in the moment where he is lacking divinity, I can become divinity tenfold. And energetically, you learn how to become divinity more powerful, more powerful. What way of oneness is missing in this scenario? Well, if he's abusing me, whether it's psychologically or physically this time, it doesn't matter how. What way of oneness is missing? That is a vibrational frequency. It's not a thought. It's not a meme. It's not a goddamn affirmation. Well, he's causing harm. Let's start with harmlessness and gentleness. So harmlessness and gentleness for my pain, because he sure as hell is not offering harmlessness and gentleness. He's doing the opposite. He's causing harm. So I can become that vibrational frequency. That's what this work teaches you. I can become the way of compassion for my own pain, because shit, that situation sucks. Don't deserve it. It's not fair. You could go into all those stories, or you could just become the way of compassion. That immediately starts alchemizing and healing the pain, the inner child wound. That inner child now sees all she has to do is activate that within herself or himself. Whatever age you are, whatever trauma happened at whenever, that's all you have to do energetically. And then all of it magically just alchemizes and it's gone. It just layer after layer goes away. However much you can handle healing in that moment, those few minutes, that hour with your coach, that's up to you. There's no rush. Take your time. But heal it for real. And once you do, it's permanently gone. Otherwise, it's not real healing, is it?
Thank you for just sharing that example, Rachel, because I think there's two things I want to kind of hold here. One is that you're not letting the person off the hook for the behavior at all. Like, yeah, and I appreciate that part. But you're saying as you become the ways of oneness, offering that to yourself, offering that to that inner child that you're helping raise. And thank you for also clarifying that we shouldn't remain stuck in our inner child.
Yeah.
We're then able to show up that way for ourselves. And we're able to kind of look and see that this person's behavior was just a projection of whatever they were missing. Doesn't make it right what they were doing, but it's just you kind of disassociating yourself from that behavior, giving yourself what you need at that time.
Yeah. And think about this. That person who harmed you, who hurt you, they were powerless. They were in powerlessness. Nobody who's in their power would harm another being, whether it's an animal, whether it's another person, male or female. Like you don't cause harm when you are truly connected to your divinity. Doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. You don't abuse. You don't harm. You don't murder. You don't rape anybody. Like you don't beat anybody up. Like you don't go to war. You just don't. That doesn't exist in you. And so that person's powerlessness means, oh, I could choose to then create a bunch of programs and behavioral patterns that are powerless too, or I could see with my divinity, my divine sight, what's missing over here. What is he lacking? What programs is he running? Not in judgment, not in I'm superior to you. And it doesn't mean what you did didn't fucking hurt. It doesn't mean it didn't devastate or cause trauma. Yeah, it fucking did. I don't ever sugarcoat that part, of course, and it's unacceptable, it's inexcusable. But he did what he did. This is the way of surrender. I have no control over what he or anybody does. We don't. However, what I do have control over, I can become not just powerful, I can become more power than either one of us has ever experienced. I'm an eternal being. I have free will choice. I can choose to do that with myself, with my energy, with my essence. It's a choice, and it's learning how to do it. And by becoming that powerful, I heal and alchemize. You become a beacon of healing and a beacon of light if you just choose to raise your vibrational frequency and become the ways of oneness, versus this happened. What pain did it cause? Let's go into that pain. Of course it caused pain. It was devastating. Of course it was horrific. But am I going to live in that? I can choose to, or I can choose to rise above, become a completely different, more elevated divine being, and I can heal all generational traumas and end it right here, right now, once and for all, and I can create a new earth with this. Why wouldn't we be choosing that with our pain?
Yeah, and this is why I'm just so grateful, because it also ends victim consciousness, because we do live in a world where it is so easy and almost justifiably so for people to say, because of all the isms, racism, sexism, we can understand why people can remain stuck in that because of the ways that they've been treated. But what you're saying, there's a whole nother route that of reclaiming your power back that you could choose to go. And I hope people, as they read the book, really kind of tap into that, because it just, for myself, it's activated kind of a whole new way of looking at things, looking at situations, looking at other people's behaviors as just a projection upon them and not a reflection upon me. Yeah. And something that you were starting, you kind of referred to, was like how we could use this to elevate our consciousness when it comes to relationships. And that's kind of what I wanted to pivot to and talk to you next, because you keep it real about, and this has been an area of my own healing, is men's objectification of women. And so as I've really looked into my treatment of women and partners, and it's like, there's a quote from you that is really, again, pierces my own spirit here, which is, when it talks about starting with the objectification of women, you've heard you share that at the root, men are projecting onto women what they think of themselves. And I would love, Rachel, if you could just speak more to that, and then we could kind of talk about how men can use the ways of oneness to heal this behavior and become more emotionally safe partners.
Yeah. So men have been conditioned in our society for centuries, to they don't realize it, a lot of people, until they go through really deep healing, but they're projecting what they really think of themselves. Like, oh, you're too emotional. No, sir, you're the one who's too emotional. That low emotional IQ means you can't handle the emotion in front of you. And then it's a projection of the objectification is, I've seen it my entire career in mental health, as a coach, as a therapist. I've seen it over and over again. That a lot of men, and I'm generalizing right now, I want to make that very clear. Of course, there's exceptions to this, but generally speaking, I'm going to generalize with this. Generally speaking, what I've seen over and over again, and men will project because that's all they think of themselves. That's all they think they're worth. That's all that they can bring to the table. If you can't bring emotional stability to the table, if we're going to be the way of truth, what the hell are you good for in any kind of relationship? That's not a judgment. And I'm going to invite everyone listening, take a breath and let that sink in for a minute. And it might feel like a sword in the heart for a lot. If you cannot bring emotional safety and stability to a friendship, to a partnership, to a business partnership, to a romantic relationship, to a marriage, if you cannot bring emotional safety and stability, what good are you? What are we left with here? A sex machine? That's it? That's all you're worth, is to have sex with? That's what's left of you? And, Men in our terrible society that raises men, the way that they treat men, they're horrific to women. I think we forget, they're also horrific to men, which is why men show up in horrific ways. Let's let that sink in as well, right? So we don't nurture the fact that every human on this planet, every being, dogs, animals, we all have emotions. Men aren't allowed to feel theirs, right? From the time we're young. Thank God that's changing now. But because of that, they don't gain and grow and evolve with an emotional IQ. So they have none for the most part. So when someone is in front of them, the masters of emotion are women. And there's a lot of reasons for it. We could do a whole separate podcast just on that. The masters of emotion are women. We understand, we read the emotion, we understand what the emotion is trying to tell us, how it's meant to guide us, how it's meant to heal, how we're meant to heal because of what we're feeling. So when that is so suppressed in men, when a woman shows up emotionally, a man will project onto her immediately with defensiveness and you're emotional, let me fix it. Nothing needs to be fixed. It needs to be felt, right? So the lack that we are, how we are not capable because of what society has turned us into as men, we will then project onto our counterparts, onto family members, but especially onto women. And when we're that lacking, how can we on a deep subconscious level feel good about who we are? Think about that. So a lot of the problems that I've seen and that I coach in relationships with men, whatever, is that deep, holy shit, I realize I actually don't think highly of myself at all. And let's go into that pain. Let's heal that and let's connect you to your own divinity. So you, in your own experience, in your own personal evolution, you can start to feel energetically what it feels like to be connected to the divine being that you actually are. That's the truth of what you are. Showing up in all these other ways, shitty. Yeah, we better change it. But it's not the truth of who you are. So when men start to connect and do this work and realize and feel and experience the truth of what you are, here's the best part. It's impossible not to fall in love with yourself. It's impossible not to love yourself when you connect with the power, the love, the unconditional love, the level of wisdom, the level of purity, the quality, all of those frequencies. When you connect and you energetically become them, you cannot look in the mirror and not be like, I'm a fucking badass. I love myself. I'm amazing. I will put myself first, not in a selfish way. In a selfless, loving way, I will heal myself. I will take care of myself. Why? Because that gives me the ability to take care of anybody else who might need my help at any given time. That is somebody to be, excited about. When we can transform that and realize that and do the work, none of this nonsense with how women are, how men are, all of that is just our society conditioned us to be that way. It's time to evolve out of it.
You offer so much in this, Rachel, because for many men, and this is something Danny and I've talked with other men, it's like when you look back at the behaviors, whether it was the treatment towards women, the lying, the cheating, the manipulating, all those things, you develop shame and guilt. Yeah. And what you've shared about, all these programs, again, none of it is right. It's not fair to cause hurt and harm to another human being. But if you could take ownership of it and also understand that, like, those programs that you're running aren't the true you.
Exactly.
It's almost as if, oh, okay, I don't have to wear this coat of who I was at my worst moment. And I can kind of go into the pain, heal those programs and those wounds and really get to what the authentic me is, and then offer that to someone. And like you said, fall in love with that person versus falling in love with the past programs that a person like has run for so long. And again, that's such a refreshing perspective. And I guess I just wanted to make sure if I kind of captured that in essence for someone who probably feels so much guilt and shame about the programs that they've run and the impact that it's had on others.
So, and think about this. If I'm carrying the energy of shame, whether I realize it or not, because we wear our masks and we don't even realize what's inside, what the pain and what the wounds really are. That's why I'm so passionate about the work we offer. Because if you don't realize you're actually carrying the energy of shame, you won't heal it. And guess what? If I carry shame within myself, I will do shameful things. Period. End. If I carry the energy of shame, I will do things that I'm ashamed of. And so trying to change behaviorally to be a better person, whether it's a man or woman, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You will always fall back on not being trustworthy or cheating again, or, to whatever degrees, because you're still carrying the shame. If you can't, that's just one example. So if that energy of shame is in there, you will always end up doing something to be ashamed of. It has to, because energy never dies. It is there. The energy never lies. Energy never lies. So if you're behaving, the certain behavioral programs are showing up, energy never lies. There is something that is causing that behavior to move through you, right? It doesn't mean we don't take accountability for it. The first way of oneness is the way of responsibility. I am the only one who can change myself at the energetic level, at any level, right? I can have a teacher, I can have a guide, I can have a professional, an expert to guide me, to show me how, but I'm the only one who can actually do it. So if I'm willing to become the way of oneness, the first way, the way of responsibility, that's my path to realizing how powerful I actually am. And that's when you start to connect to your divine power. And it's none of this crap that we see out in the world right now, which is, if I do all this crap and I'm a horrible human being and I hurt all these people, I just have to repent. That's a load of bullshit. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. We have to heal and become better, not just say we're better. There is a difference between the two.
So you just kind of lit up another question for me then, because of people wanting to use the ways of oneness to manifest. And I know you've got some thoughts about that, because we do live in a world, all right, it's 2024, everyone wants to manifest, and we're going to be entering kind of the Valentine's Day season and things of that nature. And so I also am just curious of, like, are there some common mistakes then you observe when it comes to people trying to figure out, like, well, could they use the ways of oneness to manifest their ideal relationship or kind of their dreams? And do you feel like there's like common mistakes people or myths out there that people might think that they can use the ways of oneness to now manifest a reality when it comes to, like, say, the area of love in their life?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So in the old way, in the old world, how you learned how to manifest, no, absolutely impossible, because everything's outside of you. The ways of oneness, the most powerful, and I mean this, I mean this from my heart of hearts and from my soul. The most powerful, efficient way to manifest anything is to use the ways of oneness, but you cannot comprehend that in the old ways of any manifesting technique. You are literally energetically becoming each and every vibrational frequency. So that's just how you function in life now. So think about this. If you want to manifest a relationship, well, why do you want it? Got to do some work there. Why do you want it? What is coming up for you? Is it loneliness? Is it insecurity? Is it fear of being alone? Like, are there programs and wounds that need to be addressed? Okay? Because if they are, you're not manifesting the perfect relationship that you want. Trust me. Don't date. If that's, heal yourself. But elevating and becoming each and every way of oneness, let this sink in. The way of truth, the way of presence, the way of presence. If you have a problem, if you have a conflict and somebody just showed up in the way of presence, the way of presence, the way of trust, the way of unconditional love, the way of loyalty, the way of equality. There are 20 ways of oneness. If you yourself become each and every one of those ways, it's not even possible to attract somebody who can't treat you in those same ways. Worst case scenario is you will bring somebody in because of the level that you are at, your vibrational frequency. You will bring somebody in who has maybe not become those ways yet, but they're willing to become them, right? So that's the difference, is working with the ways of oneness is a becoming. It's not some technique or tool you use that's outside of you, as we mentioned before. You become them. And as you become them, guess what? You don't need a relationship. You don't need one, which means you don't enter into a relationship with neediness, codependency, insecurities, looking to your partner to make you happy. You are 100% whole and fulfilled. Whatever your partner then brings, the good, beautiful things that he or she brings, that overflows. You are now living in so much abundance, and the wounds and the things that they also bring to the table, you meet those wounds and you respond with power. The self-love, the way of unconditional love, to set the boundaries you need to set, if you need to set them, when you need to set them. You address and you deal with those wounds and those programs, not by being submissive, by being powerful, but it also means powerful means the way of compassion, harmlessness, and gentleness. You see it? So every way that you interact with your partner that you've just manifested and brought in, because you were willing to become the ways yourself, you are now creating a relationship almost that doesn't exist on the planet, because you are elevating to a place and a space that makes you safe, that makes you divine, that makes you trustworthy, that you're not going to cause the harm. It's a completely different type of being, which means it's a completely different type of relationship. That's where we want to create our relationships, our jobs, our sole purpose, our corporations, our government. That's what we want to start to create this new earth. And it starts with individual, and it starts with our personal relationships.
And Rachel, to that point, as one does become the ways, say they've got these lingering relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, what do you find happens? Do you find that 50% of them find that like the relationships around them evolve with them, or some of them just, it's like, wow, I'm becoming this way, but people aren't elevating their frequency and they have to let them go? Just curious of like, what do you find with the clients that you work with happens to the relationships? Because as they're becoming these ways, I'm sure they're probably noticing, either do I continue on with these friendships and this relationship? Will this person also evolve with me? Like, what do you see people having to navigate as they're
Yeah.
elevating their consciousness?
So in this sort of global transformation that we're in, right, this global awakening that we're in, what you're going to find, and what I've found, of course, more and more is, or mostly I would say right now, is you tend to elevate out of the relationships where they're just refusing to evolve because they have free will choice. They don't have to evolve. Here's the beauty in becoming the ways of oneness, though. You may say goodbye to a lot of relationships. You say goodbye with compassion, with no judgment. They're not inferior to you because they're not waking up. Remember the way of equality. We're not creating inferiority, superiority. I'm superior because I'm more awakened than you. Ugh, that's a gross energy. That's not elevated energy. It's not divine. You have compassion, right? You leave with unconditional love. You feel amazing. Okay. What I do see happening, though, the more and more people that do wake up and do the real work on themselves and elevate, what I do see coming in the future is more and more percentages of people will evolve with you. It doesn't mean they have to be at the same pace. That doesn't even exist, by the way. And anybody in marriages and partnerships, you're always going to be a different level. Nobody's exactly 100% on the same precise level. We're eternal beings. That's not possible. Even if you're really close, you're not exactly the same, right? So you're going to elevate at different levels, but people will still stay in each other's lives, I see in the future, or they'll kind of ebb and flow out of them. None of that will come with pain. It won't come with loneliness. It won't come with heartbreak. We're too divine for that. It'll be, aw, I miss you. And you know what? I'll see you when I see you. And a lot of times those relationships will flow back in. Right now, we're at a phase where people have to become powerful enough to say goodbye to those relationships. And the whole reason why this first level, I'll say it this way, of say goodbye. You have to connect to your power and be powerful enough to set the boundary and say goodbye, because that's an aspect of unconditional love. Staying low with them keeps them low. Rising higher gives them the opportunity of what to shoot for. Nobody's doing anyone any favors by staying in these relationships, but you have to evolve enough and connect to your power to see the way of truth and the way of wisdom in this, and elevate and rise above. You're creating the divine spaciousness for them to make the choice to rise up to. And if they don't, you're saying goodbye with love and no judgment. If you're in judgment, you're not divine, right? So that's the difference when you become the ways versus just, oh, I have to say goodbye to the people that I love. Become the ways. It's a very different energetic experience, emotional experience when you become the ways versus just, I have to say goodbye. Ugh.
Yeah. And hearing you again, this is kind of the likeness as you offer these ways where it's like we live in a culture where people are like, I got to cut people off and cut access to people. But you're saying like, no, that maybe at this time they're not. and that's okay. Everyone's on their own path, but continue to just kind of work on yourself. And if, hey, maybe you never know in the future if people do elevate their consciousness, then you can decide if that's
Yeah,
a person that you want to engage with again,
exactly.
that kind of access again. But it doesn't necessarily, again, people don't need to feel guilty if they have to cut off relationships because of just where people are at in a different season of
Yeah,
their growth journey.
because the truth is, you are not the way of unconditional love. If you stay low energetically with another person, that is not love for them. That's not the way of unconditional love. Unconditional love is, wow, we're staying trapped here together. Ooh, I am so loving because I'm becoming the way of unconditional love. I am going to rise up. I am going to be energetically more powerful. I am going to heal. I am going to elevate, because if I expand, that creates the ripple effect of the potential for others to expand. If nobody goes above third grade education, where would we be? Somebody's got to go higher and become more educated to teach other people. Does that make sense? So it's a silly analogy, but like that's what we have to do energetically. The way of unconditional love is not staying low for the sake of somebody. That's keeping them low. You're choosing to keep both of you low. Rise, become powerful. Connect to the divinity that you are. Become more enlightened than that. You're creating the divine spaciousness for so many more people to rise up as well if you choose to rise. You're not here to worry about what anybody else is doing. Your soul wants you to rise. As you rise, you'll inspire other people to rise with you.
And speaking of like creating these kind of spaces for this type of elevation to occur, before we get into each one, teach one, I want to talk to you about like where the workplace fits into all of this, because we spend so much of our time at work and in different spaces for many folks. And so I would love to hear you just share more about the role organizations and leaders can have in one's healing. And I know specifically there's the corporate harmony coaching program. And if you could share more about how like programs like that can help elevate employees' well-being and just
Yeah,
help elevate oneness consciousness.
absolutely. So when we use the framework, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, these are the highest level of enlightened characteristics that we can energetically become. It's the highest level of enlightenment that we can achieve is oneness consciousness now in this new age of Aquarius. And in the workplace, I run my corporation, and we have the framework, and it's, what way of oneness do I need to become right now? Am I showing up as a child, projecting onto my boss, my manager, my CEO? Is the director, is the manager, whoever, are they creating inequality by thinking they're superior just because an employee has a different role than them, right? It's waking up to how we are actually showing up in any given moment and then making adjustments to it in real time. Oh my God, you're not treating me this way at all. I had a client, he actually moved through the Mystical Life Coach certification program. So he became a certified coach. And during his certification process, he kept having this problem with his bosses and the people he worked with, the startup company. And they don't appreciate me. And they don't, oh, get out of here. We did a lot of work. He went in and he realized and awakened to, oh my God, this is a daddy wound. I'm a little boy projecting onto them my daddy wound. He was blind to the fact. They appreciated him so much, but over time, they started to get real sick of him because he kept treating them like they didn't appreciate him or honor him in any way. And when he did the healing on himself, he was like, oh my God, I've been showing up like a fucking asshole. And I really believed it was them treating me shit. I'm the shitty one. Healed it, showed up, very different energetically, just in a totally different way. All of a sudden, harmony in the workplace, he got promoted, booming business, because he chose to heal himself. And what he realized was his goggles that he was seeing them through were completely wrong. Right? So we teach that at the corporate level. Like a lot of the miscommunications and the way we're showing up is literally because of our own individual wounding, period, end. If we all learn to function as the ways, if I'm in judgment right now, I am not in oneness consciousness. What way of oneness is lacking? I become that energetically. Oh, suddenly you have harmony in the workplace or in the boardroom or whatever. It's amazing. It's an amazing process.
Yeah. That's incredible because I think what's nice about this, Rachel, because some people can kind of like try to isolate it, like, okay, this is all personal work that we need to do, but it's like there shouldn't be any separation between who we are in our personal lives and who we are in our work lives. And
Right?
you create this kind of bridge to merge the two because it's very important that you are able to show up on this consciousness in the workplace, because otherwise you're just going to be projecting those emotional wounds and kind of behaving in kind of this inner child way at the workplace, and that's not healthy for anyone.
Right. And the way we compartmentalize, that's separation consciousness.
Mm.
That's separation. I'm supposed to be different at work than I am at home. That's a load of crap. No, that's separation consciousness. Because here's the truth: you take you with you wherever you go. You can't leave yourself at home and go to work, right? So when you show up to work, all your wounds, all your inner child that's going to get triggered during the day, you're projecting that onto everybody or certain people at work. You're bringing that to work. Your wounds, your programs, you're bringing that and you're projecting that onto the people you work with, right? And so when you're doing that, you're not living in oneness, and you sure as heck are not helping that business, that corporation, the service that whatever it might be. You're sabotaging it because your negative energies can only bring down. Your elevated energies can only bring up and make it better and more expansive. You're either contracting and destroying the business to whatever degree, whatever your job is. I don't care how good of an employee you think you are. Energetically, that's what you're doing. This is why we have to learn energy. And if you're expanding and becoming more divine, you just by being in the damn building or a part of that corporation are expanding that corporation or that business, whatever it is. You can only be one or the other, right? So we're either in oneness or we're not. If we're not, we are somehow causing harm or damage in some way, whether we realize it or not. Let's stop doing that as a people. Let's just stop and instead be more loving. And we get to enjoy this earth and our life experience way more if we can become these ways.
Yeah, and this book's powerful and it's for everyone. Again, on every level, especially organizations, leaders, and so I wanted to make sure we touched on that. So next, Rachel, I just want to get into our each one teach one rapid fire questions. So I've got 4 questions for you. So my first question for you, Rachel, is what is one book or podcast that you would recommend that's been a game changer for you in your journey?
I would recommend the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness. I would, and I mean this seriously. I'm not even being sarcastic, because if people become the ways, their lives will completely change. It's just impossible not to. That's the book I recommend.
Completely agree. And let me ask you this too: like, how should people go about the book? Is it a read? Is it something they should sit on? Is it something they should take notes in? Like, how should someone interact with the book? Because I know I've got my own kind of personal way of interacting with it, but I would love to hear like what you would recommend for folks.
So I think it depends on your processing style and your learning style. A lot of people love to read. If you really like to read, you're going to probably blow through the book. That's fine. My recommendation is then to go back and read each chapter slowly, with intention, with purpose, and really let it sink in. The other thing is, I know people have read it a handful of times, half a dozen times, all the way through. Another way, if you've already read it and you're going through it maybe a second time, you can pick a day, guide me, Ways of Oneness guide me, and just flip. And then all of a sudden there's a message for you on a page. There's all different ways to interact with the book to allow these teachings to connect with you. And the beautiful part is, if you drop into your heart and just ask the Ways of Oneness to guide you in the best way possible, how to move through the book will come to you, and just trust your intuition with that. The other thing I'll say very quickly is, if people want to learn more and really learn the ways, that's what Masters of Self University is for. Digital courses and all that kind of fun stuff. I'm not trying to sell anybody on that, but if you want more than just to learn on your own, we do support you in that. So that's available.
Yeah, and I think that's great to hear, because your book has so much replay value. Like I took notes, I filled up a journal, because with each way you just learn so much and you get to reflect on so much of your own journey as you're kind of going through the book. And so that's great that now there's like a digital course and just other ways that they could continue to dive into the material and just really let it sink in.
Absolutely. And the magic of the Ways of Oneness, as you read about it, what happens is that way, that vibrational frequency, because you're inviting it in, it will show you how you're not showing up in that way. It will show you the aspects of yourself that look it over here. Hey, look over here. You need to heal that. You're not showing up in the way of trust right now. And it's like you start to see yourself, oh my gosh, I'm not this way in this scenario. Oh, there, I can heal there. That's the beauty of it. It's just like miracles are kind of working through you if you allow them all the time, the more you work with the ways.
I completely agree. And so the next question I got for you, Rachel, is what's one habit or practice that has been impactful for you in your lifestyle design?
I'm going to say to become the ways of oneness. And that is to focus on where I need to heal and become more powerful. I just use it with oneness consciousness and the ways of oneness, but it boils down to that, to focus on where I need to heal and elevate and become more powerful and more divine.
And are there levels to it? For example, becoming the way of responsibility, is there like a level 1, level 2, level 3 for you? Like,
yes, there's 9 levels to each way of oneness. So anybody can function in the first 3, and you might be a 3 in the way of responsibility, but you're still only a 1 in the way of patience, or a 2 in the way of presence, but no one will be a 4 if the rest of the ways of oneness are not you haven't achieved all 3 in that first set. And they tend to work in blocks of 3. So you'll function in the first 3 ways. And then the more you evolve and the more you elevate, you're like, oh my God, that's what the way of responsibility means. Oh my God, that's what the way of wisdom actually means. Now you're getting more elevated. Your level of consciousness explodes. You see the world, yourself, in every scenario in a drastically different light, completely different perspective. Awesome. You mastered those first 3 blocks, those levels. Now 4, 5, and 6 come online. Now you have to elevate to that, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it can take a lifetime to get all the way up, but don't let left brain latch onto that part.
Well, I think that's important to share with people. Like, this is lifetime work. And I think that's one of the misconceptions also about healing is like, this isn't a 6-week course or a 12-week journey. Like, this is a commitment for life if you really want to change and heal. And
yes, it's a becoming. And you're here in a whole lifetime to become. So use the lifetime to become.
That's right. Well said. Well put there. So the next question for you, Rachel, is what's one law or policy that you would create that we all need to abide by?
That every government in the world functions as the ways of oneness for their framework. Think about this, the way of trust. If we could trust our government, the way of integrity is one of the ways of oneness. You cannot tax 17 different times on the same goddamn thing. You can't steal people's money and put it in your own pockets when you function at the vibrational frequency of trust, truth, integrity, etc. It's impossible to lie and cheat because you are not, you don't function at those lower levels that allow you to develop the programs of lying and cheating and stealing and, whatever propaganda, whatever's going on. So I would have the 20 universal ways of oneness. That's your government. That's in every school, teaching every child how divine and powerful they are. And when you can connect to the energy that you truly are, your divine energy, the sky's the limit for you. What's your soul here to experience and become while you're here? You don't have to be here and create harm. That would all go away if we had this in schools, if we had it in corporations, and we had it in government. So that's my ultimate dream and goal.
Love it. Love it. And so the last question for you, Rachel, is the question I'm asking all the guests this season, since it's all about personal responsibility, is what is one lesson about taking ownership of your life that was important for you to learn in order to become who you are today?
Beautiful question. That other people's abuse is not personal. It has nothing to do with me. So that lesson, I had that epiphany at 13 years old with my stepdad. And I had a little bit of an out-of-body experience of, oh my God, his abuse has nothing to do with me. Stop taking it so personally. It's not about me. The damage that caused is about me. That is my responsibility. And that's when I made a vow to myself as a teenager, I will stop at nothing until I see where I am fucked up because of this, I will stop at nothing. I will see it, I will own it, and I will heal it, because I will not project these onto other people to the best of my ability. And I had to learn how to do that. It was a long, painful process, but that's what I learned, and that's what I chose to become, because I didn't want to cause harm to other people the way he caused harm to me. Why would I want to be that? It felt awful. I don't want anybody to have to experience that. But when you do experience that, what can you do? Well, here's what you can do about it. Here's what you can do about it now. Let's have a gold print for what we can really do about this, and stop all this nonsense that we experience in this world.
And to take on that ownership and that awareness of it at that young of an age, that's an incredible. But again, I mean, that set the tone and the course, and obviously now we all kind of have an example of we can reclaim our power back from those younger years.
Yes.
And your book really helps us to reflect upon the ways that we can do that. So the last question for you, Rachel, is pretty much like, what's next, and where can people go to find out more about you and find the book?
Sure. So live events is what's next. So starting in March, the end of March, you can go to mastersofselfuniversity.com. That's the main website. We will have our live events posted soon. We're getting an event space to, once we get that locked down, we'll post it online. But mastersofselfuniversity.com, live events to activate and teach about the ways of oneness, but to also energetically become them in the time that we spend together. That's the next thing on the list. And we're starting that in 2024. And we're going to see what happens from there.
That is exciting stuff. I'm so happy to hear that. And again, I appreciate you, Rachel, for your time, for your wisdom, for your teachings, for just the incredible group of coaches that you've trained and you just kind of put out into the world, and just all the incredible energy that they offer. Because for someone like myself, I know others that are listening, again, as we're trying to just find a pathway to our own transformation that we need, and that is honest, that is built in integrity, but provides us with a structure to follow. You offer us that. And again, I know a conversation like today is really going to help transform a lot of people's lives, and helping them to just empower themselves again in their journey to elevating their consciousness.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate beautiful, insightful questions. And thank you. Thank you for being a person who's willing to learn about the ways of oneness and become them himself. That's what makes this world a better place. So thank you, and thank you for your time.
So folks, that is it for today's show. I'd like to thank you all for your presence and tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, also leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Reaching out to you all through the time and the space that separates us to say, remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.